Ladies and gentlemen, we're just waiting for the fourth person who's coming tonight before we can start. We have a fourth person. Hi, Dan. Okay, grab a seat. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the this meeting of the Planning Board, dated. We got Bill as well. We're really getting in good now. Dated June the 18th. I bring apologies from the chairman, who's not here, so I got asked to take over the gavel for this particular evening's performance. So may I just remind everybody, if they address the board, to sign in that clipboard sheet on the table, and obviously make sure any microphones are turned on and speak clearly, because it's not for the people here. We can hear you. It's so the benefit of the folks at home who want to watch and understand what's going on. They can hear your voice, know who you are. So that helps everybody get it right. The next planning board meeting is scheduled for July the 2nd, again at 7 p.m. in this room. Okay, that's called to order. Mr.
Point.
Sorry. I must appoint Mr. Disco to fill in to the vacant position, full voting position on the planning board. So thank you, Nelson, for taking on that responsibility. All right. Planning and Zoning Administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. In your packet, you'll have a memo dated June 10th for the two regional impact determinations for tonight. For the cell tower on the Brett Vaughn Revocable Trust property and the Robert Curry subdivision that was originally on tonight's agenda but will be postponed until July due to an abutter notification error. Staff recommends that the board determine that both of these projects are not of regional impact, as they do not meet the regional impact criteria. I will note, however, that the regional impact there is a regional notification requirement for the cell tower, which was satisfied. All communities within a 20-mile radius were notified in accordance with RSA 12K for the cell tower.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Thompson? Nelson? Borrow another one.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick question. I wondered what the status was of the sidewalk plan, the master plan that we were working with NRPC. If that's, I think you were going to write a letter or something to.
I had touched base with the state and with NRPC. To date, I have yet to hear back again from the state.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have a copy of the plan that they've put together? I mean,
the NRPC plan?
Yeah.
The draft that was sent to the state, yes, I do have a copy of that.
You do? Okay, maybe I could get a copy of it sometime. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well, that takes us to item 3.
Still need a vote on the regional impact.
Oh, sorry, you want to vote on it? Yes. Okay.
The motion in a second.
Somebody's going to make a motion for the regional impact.
I wasn't paying attention. I'm
So
sorry.
moved, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded.
Well done.
Thank you. Proposed by Mr. Boyd and seconded by Mr. Neil. Thank you very much. All in favour of accepting the recommendation of the Community Development Director?
Aye.
Aye.
So that's 5-0. Thank you. Right, item 3 is the Selco partnership, which is known also as Verizon Wireless, the applicant, and Brett Vaughn Revocable Trust, who's the owner of the site. Reviews for acceptance and consideration of a site plan for a new 125-foot tall telecommunications tower. Parcel is located 123 Wilson Hill Road, soon to be readdressed as 10 Whitetail Ridge Circle, in the R1 residential district by the zoning map, tax map 4A, lot 023, and this is the planning board case number 2019-17. Sir.
Do you want an intro for me first?
Sorry?
Would you like an intro from staff?
Oh, yes. Do you want? Oh, sorry, Bob. Yes, you would like to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to give a brief overview from the staff memorandum, this project was subject of a special exception application, which was granted by the zoning board back in February. So the location for this particular tower was decided at the zoning board level. The planning board's role in this process is to now review the tower to ensure that it meets the requirements of the site plan regulations. I will note, as I did in the memo, as Mr. Price did in the memo, that because of the requirements of the Telecommunications Act of 1996, the planning board nor any local community cannot use RF emissions or any concerns about health effects of cell towers as any reason for denial or any other decision on a location decision. So the planning board is expressly prohibited from considering that type of evidence in your decision-making here tonight. And that's basically all I've got. At this stage, I'll turn it over to the applicant for his presentation.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. As you see, I'm not used to doing the job, and Tim's having to keep me under control.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Okay, now it's on, sorry.
That's lovely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, again, my name's Victor Manoogian. I'm with McLean Middleton Professional Association, 900 Elm Street, Manchester, New Hampshire, on behalf of Selco Partnership, doing business as Verizon Wireless. As some of the board members were here and will recall, we were here on May 7th for a pre-submission conceptual hearing, and we got a lot of good feedback from the planning board members, and we feel we've addressed all of them on the plans that were subsequently submitted. As I had two filings, I had a filing on April 30th before the conceptual, and then on May 28th, I had a final filing with the revised drawings, my waiver requests, and some other compliance with the wireless ordinance spelled out in there. I want to thank Mr. Thompson for his little intro. I'm not going to beat that to death. Last time we were here, there was a lot of public sentiment about put it elsewhere. We're not here for that. The ZBA did approve our use for this site, so we're here for site plan review for this tower based on the jurisdiction your board has for that, and also for the health reasons. We've talked a lot about that. We've submitted with the zoning board the things they needed, and it is preempted by the FCC. So I want to focus on what we did on the drawings, and then go on and see how you want me to proceed. I'll go down my list. So one of the initial things was there was some confusion about whether it's a monopole, unipole, or a flagpole. So on sheets A1 and A2 and anywhere else that the tower was referred to, we renamed it as a flagpole, so there's no confusion. Another topic was that we changed the name of the, we show the lot lines for the new approved subdivision for the landowner's property, not just on sheet C3. So we corrected that and added the lot lines and the new configuration on sheet C1. Also, there was a request to change Black Oak Road to Whitetail Ridge on sheet 3, as well as a few other sheets, and we did change them across the board. We corrected the transposition error and made sure we had the right planning board signature lines. We noted the easement that we get rights under in the subdivision that was approved on sheet C3 as note 3, and that was raised by the board at the conceptual as well. And then a lot of the good discussion came about the width of the gravel driveway and fire truck access. And based on the feedback we got, I did go to the fire chief, who then sent me to John Manuel Fire Marshal, and we discussed what the requirements are, and we've since redesigned to meet the fire truck turnaround requirements and put in a 56 by 56 hammerhead type turnaround as the board had suggested, and that's depicted in the drawings. Also, you wanted us to show the elevation difference from the base of Wilson Hill Road, just at ground level, to the elevation at the base of the tower. Again, just ground level from above sea level. So we show those on sheet C1. The height at the road is 305 feet, and the height at the base of the proposed tower is 434 feet. So we're looking at a rise uphill of 129 feet. And one of the board members also asked me at that time, and I didn't have that information, what was the elevation difference at the Turkey Hill cell tower that we did a few years ago. And we looked at that. On that site, the tower ground level next to the water tank was 354 feet, and the approximate height at the road was 192 feet. So that's quite a little more vertical uphill, so that was a delta of 162 feet difference from the street up to the base of the tower. Let's see. The board wanted to note about future co-locators can only use propane as a fuel source, and also a suggestion was made by staff to limit the time that the fuel would be delivered. So we've added notes to sheets A1 and A2 at the bottom left that both say the same thing. They say generators shall be fueled by generators, plural, sorry, shall be fueled by propane gas only. And 2, refueling and testing of generators shall take place between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. weekdays to address any concerns about noise during deliveries. And then one of the last points I remember was to show when the utilities will start running underground versus above ground. And sheet A1 shows the utilities running underground, and they will run underground from the last telephone pole, which exists on the landlord's driveway. So when we hit that last telephone pole, which is shown on sheet C3, past that telephone pole, once we're on the landlord's, right after that pole and on the landlord's leftover property, we will be underground to the tower site. So those are the things that we addressed based on the feedback we got from the board. What I wanted to also touch upon briefly, because it was raised at the last meeting, was that a lot of the coverage, according to one of the abutters, is not so much in your town, but in an abutting town. So I looked up the new FCC order that went into effect in January, which was a further interpretation of the Telecommunications Act of 1996. So I technically started this before that, so I wouldn't raise that as part of a filing at that point. But if a file came before a board now, under this new interpretation, the FCC has said that the wireless carriers can now plan their future infrastructure without showing a gap. We've done that. We showed a gap with our RF report. But if you push the envelope to the full extreme, the FCC now says that you no longer have to show a gap in coverage, and a wireless carrier can be allowed to plan for their future expansion, even though if there isn't an immediate need at this site, or including upgrades and things. So I just want to throw that as a side note, but we do definitely have a gap here, and we've shown that to the zoning board. And lastly, I did see the memo from Robert Price to the board dated June 13th, and if I can just sneak a peek at that. I did reply to the email that sent me that. And we have no problems with addressing the items listed in there with the following qualifications. We are planning on recording every sheet of the plan. I did that last time with Turkey Hill, and the registry will take it as long as we don't have any photos. So we're careful not to have photos on the drawings, like sky shots or Google shots. So we will be recording every page. The other corrections and such, we have no problems doing. And there was one more thought I lost. No, I think that was it. So we have no problems with the staff report, and at this point, I can either take questions from the board, or if you want me to go through the submissions as far as how I meet both the site plan review regulations and the specific tower ordinance based on my submittals of April 30th and May 28th, I can, but I spelled them out in there.
I
and
don't
said
think
how
you
I
need to
them.
do that, sir. I think you will just, it will just complicate our issues. So can I ask my colleagues if they have any questions? Now's the time to ask Mr. Manoogian how, did I pronounce that right, sir? I'm sorry.
That's perfect.
What questions they've got, and let's see if he can give us some answers. Mr. Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Manoogian on C2, running north past the Bituminous Drive to access the barn. You have it delineated as a proposed 20-foot wide access and utility easement. However, on sheet C-3, it's still showing proposed 16-foot wide gravel access drive. My testimony the last time that you were here was correcting that so that it would be 20 feet wide from Wilson Hill Road up to the tower. Is that the case still? And if so, can you correct C3 for me?
So what we said we'd do from that section, once we left the landlord's paved driveway, we had as 12 feet wide gravel driveway, and this board suggested that fire trucks may need 16 feet. So we confirmed that with the fire department. So the gravel drive will be 16 feet as it's depicted on C3.
Okay.
But the actual easement is
It's
20
20 feet.
feet. So we're only going to gravel 16 feet, but that's in case we have to run anything underground outside the 16 feet. We
What-
have room.
Clarification to staff, Mr. Chair. What is the appropriate width? I thought it was 20 when we last talked. Did I
For
misunderstand?
pavement width or for driveway width?
For driveway width to access.
It was to
the-
be verified by fire, and fire
Correct.
verified 16 was what they needed for driveway width. 20 was sufficient for the easement itself.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Can I ask you, sir, does this tower going to be able, sorry, I shouldn't, it's flagpole, or whatever you call it, is this going to enable us, the Verizon to have the next stage 5 of the wireless communications?
You mean 5G?
5G, yeah.
It can't happen without it, but it's part of that infrastructure. So eventually, for 5G to work, it will also need some small cells attached to the macro sites. So yes, it will, but down the road. It's like the FCC order said, they're trying to build out their infrastructure. So part of making 5G work is having enough macro towers, the big towers that we're building, so that they can later talk to the smaller antennas that will
Okay.
be on top of telephone poles and such, which is how 5G will get the signal to the customers.
The other question I have is that if there were to be somebody else using space on your tower, would they have to have a separate generator, or is your generator going to be sized large enough to provide the power for anybody who might be on the site?
So Verizon does not share its generator. Other carriers feel the same way. They don't want to rely on somebody else's equipment in a power failure and point fingers. So Verizon always wants to do a generator. So we're going to have our own generator. A lot of the other carriers don't. They just rely on the 8 to 10 hour battery backup that all our systems have. So I can't answer if they will or not, but I know that we won't share ours with any other carrier, and that's universal throughout the industry.
Thank you very much. You've clarified that point. Anybody else have any other questions? I see from the various notes that you initially didn't ask for waivers, but in fact the waivers are
Robert missed the waivers included in that letter that was included with the application.
there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waivers, and you, I think, have addressed them in a separate letter.
We do need to deal with acceptance
Yes.
before we get to that.
Oh, sorry. Let's. Does anybody? Can I have a motion to accept that this plan is suitable for our final consideration?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded.
Moved by Mr. Disco, seconded by Mr. Boyd. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's 500. So we've accepted the plan. Let's move. Shall we take the waivers next?
You can do the waivers or
Yes.
public, whichever way you want to go.
If you look there, the mention is that there need 5 different waivers. One is for parking, one is for soil types and boundaries, one is for stormwater drainage, one is for engineering calcs, and one is for landscaped area.
I will just add.
Sorry, 6-1 for paved pedestrian or sidewalk.
I will just add for the board's consideration that these waivers are very typical of these types of applications, and the board has routinely granted them for cell towers, given the limited amount of disturbance in the actual land area that's involved.
Go on, Mr. Boyd.
I did not get a copy of the waiver request in my packet. Oh, it's attached to
It's
the
in the
second.
McLean Middleton letter hand delivered to Bob Best.
Okay,
It's on the
hold
second page,
Okay, thank you.
and the justification on the third page.
The justification is that the facility does not require parking, it will only generate, et cetera, and therefore the suggestion is that they're not going to need, the waivers should be granted to them.
So the follow-up question, Mr. Chairman, to Tim would be regarding the waiver regarding stormwater. Now that this community is becoming more heightened as it relates to the MS4 permit, do we have any concerns about the type of elevation of where the cell tower is running down to Wilson Hill Road, going from impervious to pervious onto to Wilson Hill Road? Do we expect, in a given rainstorm, would you anticipate there to be anything?
It's negligible impact based on
It's
Public Works
negligible
review.
impact.
Based on Public Works review, yes.
Okay, and Kyle, was that
Kyle
Kyle?
and Dawn
Dawn?
did review the project,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so can we first address all the waivers? Anybody want to make a motion? I would suggest humbly that we could take them as a pack rather than having to go through each one, but I'm always prepared to do whatever everybody wants me to do.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve all the waivers requested in this case, which is typical of this type of site.
Justification of,
Yeah, any of those things imposed on this kind of a site.
strict conformity or
Strict
specific
conformity.
circumstances?
Okay, strict conformity would impose an undue hardship upon the developer of this site.
It's more really that specific circumstances indicate the
Okay,
waiver
I
will
have
carry out the spirit and intent in my book, but whichever way you like it. Can I have a second from Nelson's?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. All in favour of granting all the waivers as a job lot? Say aye.
Aye.
That's 500. Anybody else have any further questions? Otherwise, we'll throw it open to the public. And at this point, if I look very carefully, I will read into the record a memo that we received from a Mr. Michael Chow. He said, "Dear Sir, Madam of the Planning Board, I'm writing to oppose the site plan for a new 125-foot tower telecommunications tower. The tower will adversely affect the value of the whole area and the neighbourhood, and it should not just benefit the owner of the land where it is located. The wave and field of the communication can also have adverse health effects, which we know we can't discuss. Anybody can see the tower will be affected by the tower. Thank you for your attention. Mr. Chow, who is an abutter. That letter can go in the record. His reasons primarily are that he doesn't like to see the thing, and it's also the health problem, which, as we know, we can't consider. Anybody else in the general public would like to make some comments to the board before we discuss this matter? Please come forward. Yes, please do come forward, sir. Thank you for signing your name and tell us what your concern is.
Sean Lynch, I'm at 120 Wilson Hill, right across the street from the proposed location. This is the fourth meeting we've had on this subject, so it's been a lot of discussion back and forth. I think we're all facing the 5G nightmare together on both sides of this issue. That's the unfortunate part of this discussion, but aside from health issues, there's one thing. So the zoning board initially said there was no need and it would adversely affect property values in the neighborhood. I think based on what was presented on the FCC that we can't have the no need discussion in Merrimack anymore. Okay, we'll concede. The other issue was property values and visibility. So there was a shift in design to what's being called the flagpole, even though a flagpole is probably 1/100th of the diameter of what's being put up there. All the trees that were up there have been completely cut down. So from the road all the way up to where the proposed location is, previously when it went through zoning, you could not see. It was covered in trees. It was woods. If you look there today, I don't know if anyone's driven past. I have pictures. If it's worth it, it's completely clear. So there's a clear path from the road straight up to the house. To the left is where the location of the proposed tower is going to be. So there is zero obstructed view. We'll all be looking at a 125-foot tower, 5 feet or 3 feet in diameter, and we're concerned about the value to our properties. I think that's an issue that has been discussed, but now with all the land cut completely, I think it needs to be revisited, frankly. So that's all I had to share. But
Thank you for
Thanks for
your
your time.
input, sir.
Thank you.
Does anybody else want to, before we ask the applicant, please do come forward, madam. Thank you. Please tell us what concerns you.
Okay, my name is Karen Grimes, and I live at 117 Wilson Hill Road. So please
Can you-
excuse me for my nerves.
Can you bring the microphone closer to you
not
so we
getting
can,
on the
so
mic.
everybody at home wants to hear you?
Okay, my name is Karen Grimes. I live at 117 Wilson Hill Road. Please forgive me for my nerves because I am petrified right now. Okay, the only reason we are here is because of the development that's going in. If this development was not going in, Brett Vaughn would not be putting in a cell tower. When he came to you way back with the development, all we heard about was how beautiful these homes would be at a cost of $600,000 plus, with beautiful views, and now we're here because of a cell tower. Per Verizon, we will not see the cell tower, just like the previous person said, because they did a balloon test showing that you could not see the cell tower through the trees because there was no foliage on the trees. Yet every picture that was shown had trees, had foliage. Since the test, the area where the pictures were taken has been completely stripped. The part that has been stripped is going to the house from the road, and the part behind us has not even been stripped yet, so we don't even know how bad this is going to be for us to look at it. The cell tower was supposedly needed to strengthen the signal in the area. If you look, the north is undeveloped along with conservation land, south of the Sohegan River, and the main coverage is west, which is Amherst. Of course, we just heard that the FCC says it doesn't matter if it's a different town. There's nothing we can do about it. So the whole point is basically Amherst is getting all the benefits from this cell tower, yet I pay taxes and live in Merrimack, yet I can't say anything about it because the FCC has decided that. the majority of the people at the zoning board all said they do get coverage in the area, so it's not that we don't get coverage, it's not really needed. But they felt that they needed this tower to increase, like I said, the town of Amherst. And in December, the meeting was appealed because Verizon felt the zoning board had made the meeting too personal, listening more to what we had to say than what Verizon was trying to convey. Yet at the appeal meeting, right before the vote was taken, one member made it perfectly clear to all that they did not have cell coverage, and as soon as they drove into their driveway, they lost their signal and voted for Verizon. If that wasn't a personal reason, I don't know what was. I don't know if they were looking at the coverage map, because if you looked, because of the topography of Wilson Hill Road, the signal doesn't even cover the east end of Wilson Hill Road. Like I said, the whole coverage is basically going west, which is Amherst, because Wilson Hill Road becomes Spring Street, which is Amherst. And Verizon claimed that there would be no loss to property values because no one in Merrimack has ever made a request for a tax abatement for diminution of property values based on their proximity to a cell tower. I spoke with Maureen Covell at the assessor's office, and there is no such thing as an abatement or exemption for cell towers. Therefore, you don't get any tax relief for a cell tower. The National Association for Realtors said you can expect at least a 20% decrease in your property value because no one wants to live near a cell tower. Even Lynn Christensen was reported as saying in the Union Leader, "I'm not sure I'd want one in my backyard either." How strange in this day and age of rights to know laws that the FCC can demand that no one speak of health risks, yet there have been studies done all over the world proving that health risks do occur because of cell towers, and that cell towers are harmful to animals, disorient birds, insects, and affect plant health. Think to yourself if you would want a cell tower near you, and why, if you wouldn't, do we? And finally, there's a famous line from a movie, "Build it and they will come," but for the cell tower, it's build it and they will run. Because I don't think these people that are gonna go up in this development, paying over $600,000 for homes, are gonna be very happy that they are gonna be staring at this giant tower. Because we are below, they are gonna be up above, right in level view of this cell tower. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, ma'am. Does anybody else want to say anything from the general public? Otherwise, we'll close the public input and we'll ask the applicant to come back and answer, if the best of his ability, the issues that have been raised. Obviously, the issue of health from cell towers is it's not allowed on the field, so that one's out of court. But please, could you answer the thing about, do you have any instances of loss of value for people in anywhere else you've put towers up, etc.?
So we have submitted the real estate valuation report, and that talks about that. And the expert is here if the board has specific questions, but that report says they have not found any diminution in value or any a tax abatement by an assessor for lower property values. So he's here if there's any questions on that. I also want to just touch on the clearing and the photo sims we submitted based on the first testimony from an abutter. So this picture was taken within the past month, May 10th, by Brian Ross, who's the site act for this site from Structure Consulting Group. So this is right from Wilson Hill Road. If you, and I could either switch to the photo sims or refer to the last page of the photo sims that are in your package from the April 30th filing. And it's photo number 26, which is the last photo in there.
If you could switch to it, I don't think they have.
Switch to that is better? Okay, so I'll minimize this, and then we'll go back and forth to show you that you still can't see. Oh, that's not what I want. So just to give an idea, this is where it can be seen. This is the landlord's house, and here's the monopole from this view. But this is not visible from the street. And this is based on the photo sims done by this company. I'm going to get to the last page. I apologize. So photo number 26 is taken from the roadway in front of 153 Wilson Hill Road. And here's a telephone pole. The tower is back behind here. You can't see the flagpole in this picture. So just keep an eye on this telephone pole. And when I switch, I'm slower than the average person, so I go to the old school. So when I switch, yes, he has cleared over here, but the tower's behind this area, and it still won't be seen. And this is after the clearing, so all the clearing's done. And again, this is the pole that was there. So it's going to be off behind. You can't see his house up here, and you won't be able to see the tower behind these trees. So I don't think anything's changed. And I didn't do bait and switch. I mean, we filed at a certain time, and we took pictures that were available at that season. But we did go out and, take a picture after the clearing. So I would suggest that it's still not visible from the houses on the street because of the topography. And I don't think I'm going to add anything to that. I think.
Can I ask a question? When the cell tower pole was put in on Home Depot on 101A, they actually flew a balloon at the request of this board so that anybody could comment. I mean, that pole actually, I could see it from my home. So they did a balloon test to see the top of the balloon was at the top of where the tower would be. And by and large, nobody had any real issues. Did you do that in this site?
Yeah.
Yes, there was a balloon test done before the ZBA application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
And I believe I submitted them with this package too, but it was done for the ZBA. Yeah, it is in this package. But yeah, we did a balloon test with 26 locations taken.
And did everybody, all these abutters, all these people locally, know that you were doing it? Did
No,
you make it public?
This was done in advance of the filing. The board did not request one to be done for the public. We always do one on our own, and if a board says do it again, we do it again. But we always like to submit photo sims with our initial filing to whichever board has the first shot. In this case, it was the ZBA. But we're not asked to do one with notice, and the ordinance doesn't require it, but sometimes
And
we
the
do that.
ZBA presumably did not, Mr. Thompson, ask for a balloon test with
That's correct.
with notification?
There was not a second balloon test requested, correct?
Okay. All right. Any further questions, comments from the board?
I have a question, Mr.
Please
Chairman.
go.
What is the diameter of this proposed flagpole? It's been, a couple numbers were thrown out here,
Yeah, I'm
3
gonna
feet and 5 feet.
Let Derek take that.
Will you make certain, sir, you put your name on the board in
Yeah,
due course?
He's on here.
I
All
did.
right, thank you.
Thank you. Derek Creaser, Hudson Design Group. I'm a civil engineer. I've worked in telecommunications for about 15 years. Typical unipole / flagpole diameter is about 5 feet at the base and 3 feet at the top. It tapers. So 3 feet, approximately about this. That way you can fit your 3 antennas around a spine that's in the middle that serves as the structural support of the center of the tower.
And what about this, I want to know about this particular one. Is this 5 feet going to 3? Is that what you're telling me? You just said that was a typical,
Yeah.
but
That's typical of what we design for today for all carriers.
that's what you're designing
About-
for in this particular case.
So the structural analysis and the design of the tower would take place after, and it would be part of the building permit filing, but we can make sure that that represents 3 feet at the top.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
I mean, I would issue one comment. You comment about the tower, the pole. It's being, if you see the notes, they're going to paint it light grey, which I think is probably a good idea. It'll fade in the sky better. But if you want to see what some ugly telecom towers, take a drive down the main road goes past, it's 130, I think, yeah, 130. You could see they have these ones with these false tree things sticking out, and I think they're unsightly, and I think far worse than this thing. But that's a personal opinion, that's me talking, I'm not offering any thoughts. Otherwise, Mr. Boyd.
Yeah, just a comment to the abutters, only because in the last meeting I disclosed about a potential conflict of interest, and Mr. Manoogian was kind enough to say that I could serve, sit, and hear this particular petition. It's been my experience that the better bite at the apple, and this is me speaking personally, the better bite at the apple regarding issues such as this, based on how the Telecommunications Act of 1996 has been written, is making the argument at the ZBA. Because once it comes to the planning board, we're very limited in terms of what we can do. So long as the applicant meets the requirements of the standards of our ordinances, and they satisfy to the planning board's ability, then quite honestly, reluctantly, we have to approve these particular projects. At the ZBA, when they're going for an exception, that's where you look at the letter of what the federal government has written, and you use the letter of the law that the federal government has written to your advantage to make the argument before the ZBA. Quite honestly, this was written in 1996. Here we are 23 years later after the fact, and so many changes have occurred from 1996, which was revolution. Cell phones were revolutionary at that particular time. Now it's, my cell phone, I was just talking with somebody about that today. It took more to put somebody on the moon than it does to build a cell phone, to be able to create the level of power and technology and information that goes into one smartphone. So really, the argument needs to be made to our federal legislative delegation, Congressman Pappas, Senator Hassan, Senator Shaheen. Make the case to them that this act needs to be revisited so that local control can be given back to the community so that they can have a real impact in decision-making powers on issues such as this. Because I'll be the first one to tell you, I abhor a cell tower in neighborhoods, especially in residential neighborhoods. I absolutely abhor them. In a business district, in a commercial or an industrial district, that's quite honestly where it serves a purpose. But in a residential district, to me, it defeats the character and the purpose of what a residential district should serve. So, I would encourage the abutters who are impacted by this, write a letter to your congressman, write a letter to your senator, and tell them that this needs to be revisited. Because if you really want to have control, if you want to give us the ability to have control and have real decision-making power over the development of cellular towers in neighborhoods or just in communities in general, then you got to get the federal government to relinquish their law and put the onus, bring local control back to us. It's the only way you're going to fix the problem. So, reluctantly, I have to support the project, but I wanted my voice to be heard, to know that my neighbors, that I do empathize and I do sympathize with them, but reluctantly, our hands are pretty much tied with this particular issue, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr.
So,
Boyd.
thank
I think
you.
that was a very useful, I think we all learned something from that, and maybe that's something we all should do in the time when we get to, what's about 12 months' time when we're voting again.
Correct.
All right, is there any other questions? Anybody else wants to raise any issues, or can I have somebody make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move acceptance of a site. Excuse me?
It's
Conditional approval, we've already
Conditional
accepted.
final approval.
Thank you for the clarification, Tim. I move conditional approval of a site plan for a new 125-foot tower, telecommunications tower located at 123 Wilson Hill Road, soon to be readdressed as 10 Whitetail Ridge in the R1 Residential District by zoning map, tax map 4A lot 023, as delineated by case number PB 2019-17.
With the conditions recommended.
With the conditions recommended by staff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Do I hear a second? Second. Thank you, Neil. And anybody wants to have any adjustment to the motions? I'll take a call then. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? No. So it's 5-0-0. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you, folks. I think, please take to heart what Mr. Boyd has explained to you, because he is really stating the facts. And, well, we all benefit from cell towers, but we have to think whether we're going to continue to do so in the same way. All right, item 4. Petroleum Marketing Group, Inc., the applicant, Blue Hills Fuels, LLC, the owner. A conceptual discussion of a potential site plan to raise and rebuild an existing gas station stroke convenience store. The parcel is located at 1 Continental Boulevard in the C2 General Commercial and Aquifer Conservation District. Tax map 4D lot 054-01, Planning Board case number 2019-16. If anybody's any doubt which one, it's the one on the corner where the Greeley Street, Camp Sargent, and Amherst Road all meet together. It's the
Golf. The Gulf Station.
The Gulf. Thank you. I couldn't remember what it was. It's a Gulf station.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, in your packets, you'll have a memo from Planning and Zoning Administrator Robert Best. This is a conceptual plan, non-binding discussion with the applicant, and expectation that at some point they may submit a new application. The proposal, as we understand it, is to reorient the convenience store so that it faces Continental Boulevard, whereas today it faces Camp Sargent. It also calls for the addition of a drive-through food service window where the existing facility does not have one. This would require a trip to the Zoning Board of Adjustment should this move forward for a special exception, because a gas station is permitted only by special exception in this district. There would need to be a few tweaks to the parking based on the information that we've received. We also want to make note for the applicant very strongly that the Planning Board is currently undertaking a complete overhaul of our site plan regulations, and it's highly likely that this will be coming in after the posting of our public hearing for the new regulations, so that any new application would likely need to follow the new regulations come August. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sir, please tell us who you are and tell us why you want to knock down a perfectly good gas station.
Absolutely. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Ron Lazat. I am with Macer Consulting. We are the
Point of order,
civil...
Mr. Chairman, I can't hear the applicant.
Is a microphone on?
Well,
No,
there's
I'm
people
trying to get those two
talking.
guys to be quiet.
Yeah.
Oh, gentlemen, could you let us handle the matter without having your own meeting? Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Ron Lazat. I am with Macer Consulting. We are the civil engineer on behalf of Petroleum Marketing Group. We're the ones that would be redesigning the site. As noted earlier, what I have up in front of you right now is an existing aerial of the property. It is an existing Gulf station. It is located at the southwest corner of Continental Boulevard and Camp Sargent Road. The site is approximately 0.78 acres. It is located in the C2 General Commercial Zone. And again, as noted earlier, we are aware that there is a new ordinance pending, so we'll wait to see what happens there. Currently, gas stations are permitted by special exception. Kind of working into the site from an existing condition standpoint, access to the site is via 3 driveways. There is a single right-in, right-out on Continental Boulevard. And the reason why it is right-in, right-out is because that road is divided with a median down the center. And then on Camp Sargent, there are 2 right-in, right-out driveways, and again, Camp Sargent does have a median down the center, so again, those driveway access points are restricted. The site itself currently exists as a service station with a C-store. As you notice, there is an overhead canopy which runs perpendicular or parallel to Continental Boulevard, perpendicular to Camp Sargent. The canopy is actually right up on the right-of-way, so there is a 0 setback on that canopy. Currently does have 4 MPDs or 8 fueling positions. I don't know if anybody has frequented the store, but it is a 1,800 square foot C-store. It's pretty tight on the inside as far as the layout is concerned. The site currently is about 74% impervious, so the majority of the property is paved, and it currently has 23 spaces. Adjacent uses, again, north, which is the top of the page, right across Continental Boulevard, we do have an existing Burger King. Directly to the west of that is a existing service station with drive-through that is Rapid Fuel. To the west behind us is Papagino's Pizza, and then just beyond that is McDonald's. And then to the south, or to the bottom of the page, is FSB. And then across the street again is Camp Sargent, and then vacant property beyond that. Under proposed conditions,
Please take a microphone if you're going to want. Oh, okay. You probably have to turn it on. That's it.
It's on.
It's on.
I don't know, does anybody have a copy of the concept in front of them, or is this, oh, okay.
Yeah, we've got it.
So just to better clarify what we have is, we're going to look to raise and rebuild the existing site. And as noted earlier, everything is going to be oriented towards Continental Boulevard. We're looking to come in with a brand-new overhead canopy. We're still maintaining the 4 MPDs that are out there now, so it'll still stay 4 MPDs, 8 fueling positions. We will slide the building back, so where it was originally facing Camp Sargent will now be facing Continental. It'll be a new 3,000 square foot C-store with a QSR drive-through. The drive-through will actually run around the back of the building, and then we are going from 23 plus or minus parking spaces down to a total of 11 on the property. But again, we feel that, based on our experience with these types of facilities, and especially with the convenience of the drive-through, the majority of the business will be going through the drive-through from the convenience standpoint. And then usually with the C-stores, as people are filling up their cars and stuff like that, we usually see a lot of times they'll actually run in and grab their coffee as the car is being filled from that standpoint. This concept that you see here, pretty much we are maintaining the existing driveway on Continental Boulevard. However, we are reducing the number of driveways from 2 down to 1 on Camp Sargent. Again, both driveways will be right in, right out. And then also, more importantly, the overall, there will be an overall reduction of 7% on the impervious coverage. So we'll be going from 74% down to 67%, which is approximately 2,500 square feet of additional landscaping or green space will be on the property. Right now, from a variance standpoint, the canopy will be fully compliant from a front yard setback. However, we will be requiring a side yard variance, which is towards the back of the building or the drive-through side, which currently faces FSB. That is actually 30.73. The existing building is about 27 feet from that side, so we're actually increasing that a little bit. And again, we do have a commercial property where that will be fronting, but we do have enough green space, because right now, if you look at the existing aerial, there's actually parking right up against that property line. So we're actually going to be increasing a little buffer there, and we'll be able to landscape that with the proposed plan.
If I could interrupt,
Please.
Mr. Chairman. The plan is showing 2 fronts and 2 rears. However, under our ordinance, we consider those to be 2 side setbacks, which are
Yeah.
actually only a 20-foot setback, not a 30-foot setback.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So then if that's the case, then we would comply with that, and then there would be no variance. And then also, we would be requesting a parking waiver for the number of stalls that are required, and as far as what we're proposing. From an architectural standpoint, pass out a standard as far as what we're doing. This building is similar, similar to the Circle K, which is right around the corner here. This is pretty much the style of the building that we would be proposing. It's our New England style. Normally our prototype up north, Virginia. New
Please
York,
go back to
Jersey.
the microphone. female.
Our standard, especially up north, is a fully, all four sides finished brick building with stone base and a precast cornice up top. As we start moving further north, and especially what we're doing in Bellingham now and Framingham, would be more or less this New England style building, which is the clapboard. In Bellingham, we've actually implemented the stone base on that one. And then what we do is we also take that stone base and we actually apply it to the columns, the base of the columns on the canopy as well, just so it kind of ties in with the building that we're proposing. And aside from that, that's pretty much it as far as what we're proposing.
Could I just perhaps start off the questioning by saying, as far as I recall, your new canopies pretty well on top of the fuel tanks. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it certainly indicates to me that when you've got the big tanker downloading it or filling up your fuel tanks, the Continental Boulevard access is generally blocked. I mean, and I speak from experience because I use that station. So I am concerned that you're going to make life more difficult for everybody because you've got the canopy sitting on top of the fuel tanks and the fuel tanks have to be filled up. But that's my comment.
Valid point, understood. This is kind of similar to what we do. Actually, Petroleum Marketing Group actually owns and operates about 2,500 stations right now for Virginia, all the way through the north and as well as further down south in Florida. Typically, when the fuel trucks do come into the site, they all come in and they offload to the right. So the way we have it set up is that we do have it broken in a little bit that when the truck does come in, actually the back part of the tanker will be sitting back here. But if you notice, we actually provide a 24-foot aisle up to the canopy. Okay, so again, vehicles will still be able to get by it, and then also a vehicle will still also be able to be sitting at the MPD without being impacted by the fuel truck. So even with the fuel truck sitting there delivering, he'll actually be able to hug that curb line because we do have it set back a little bit further where the fills are, where the fuel filling ports are. So then any vehicle come in will still be able to pass along the side without impacting a vehicle sitting at the MPD. And again, with any application, we would supply a truck turning template so you can kind of see how the truck would be sitting.
Is there no regulation that says people shouldn't be filling up their cars when you're actually filling up the tanks because of possibility of a car setting off a spark or something for your fuel tanker?
No, sir. We haven't come across any of that.
Okay. That's what they happened in my home country, so no doubt America will eventually catch up. But I seriously think it's an issue.
Sure.
Anybody else have got any questions? Please, I've hogged it so far. Mr. Boyd, let's get you first.
No.
All right, Mr. Disco first then.
What sort of service are you providing with this drive-through? Is this food of some kind?
It varies depending. So what we call it is a QSR, quick serve. So usually in a so
Is now.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
yeah, sure, no
My
problem.
question, yeah. I
Yeah,
just wanted to
so typically what we'll have in this type of facility, usually about 400 square feet would be set aside at that 3,000 square feet for the QSR, and it could be a coffee. We've done Dunkin' Donuts in these before. I know that there's Dunkin' Donuts around the corner. It's probably about a half a mile away. I know that sometimes when Dunkins do come in, they will probably be within a half a mile of each other. We've done other coffee facilities before. It could be a Starbucks or something else. But again, we usually keep that open as far as to see who would be interested in that. But again, a lot of times it could be a coffee.
Yeah. Typically, we've required a bypass lane on those kind of food lines.
Sure.
And so you may need to provide that here so that people can get around if if the line's moving too slow and it's getting close to work time, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have room down along the bottom to be able to provide that, as you can see on the plan.
Yeah. Okay, I just wonder what sort of food service you were providing, and what sort of services you would be providing. It sounds like you're mostly into coffee and donuts.
Correct. Yeah. It would be something that requires an extraordinary amount of time to prepare it. So, yeah, we're good with that.
Yeah. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Disco. Mr. Boyd.
I want to believe that it was either a year ago or maybe 18 months ago that that location went through some renovations where they replaced the gas tanks there. And they also replaced,
That is correct, Mr. Boyd. They had to be replaced because of the new double wall tanks.
okay.
They
so-
were all dug
monitoring
up
and so
and
forth.
Okay,
rebuilt.
So are you going to be going through that exercise again, or are you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Just to dovetail off of the chairman's point, it's a tough location based on the traffic that utilizes Continental Boulevard and Camp Sargent Road, and also having been a patron of that particular location, it is very difficult. I find when I go in and I come in off of Continental, I got to loop around to get back onto Continental. I will purposely avoid Camp Sargent Road because I do not want to go driving back through the shopping center or going up to the set of the lights and banging a U-ey and coming back the other way. It's very easier to, well, it's not easy, but I prefer to go out onto Continental. And that being said, where you've got 3 lanes queuing at that traffic light and throwing a tractor trailer that's delivering gas there, I think you're looking at, based on the current design, a situation that is very, very strangulated as it relates to ingress and egress onto the property, and also the level of capacity based on the design that you're proposing. That's just the way that I look at it. The building, I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm very thrilled with the proposed building that you're seeking to do. I love the dormers, I love the shutters, the whole New England motif. We've had other projects in this community where we've asked for that, we're told we can't get it, then we go see them up in other communities, and we kind of throw our hands up in the air. But this, I really want to thank you. This fits into, what we're trying to do here in the community. So I wish Desiree was here, because I think I'd love to hear Desiree's opinion to get the architect's point of view on it. But at least for me, I like the conceptual design of what you're looking to build there. But that being said, I think based on the location, we can't impose a traffic impact study on this, but I can only imagine what this place is going to be like when we're already having issues. Oh, I can't believe I'm going to say that, Nelson, with that stupid light at Executive Park Drive and Amherst Road. What the additional, with the newness of this location and the product.
The hope being that with the mitigation improvements that the residences of Executive Park are making to those signals, with the peer-to-peer signalization system that's going to be coming, that should help, because it will be able to sense in real time where the issues are and where the volumes are to be able to meter the traffic through these intersections better.
I shudder to think of this being one way in, one way out. They come in off of Continental, they go out on Camp Sargent Road, but I also think that would be somewhat, actually, no, it would be somewhat limiting if somebody's coming up Amherst Road looking to access the gas station. They would, if that was an egress, they'd have to go do a loop around.
There is only, if you're coming from Amherst Road, the only way you can get on here is Camp Sargent.
It would be Camp,
Yeah,
it's
because
correct.
of the medians on the roads. Yeah.
Correct. So, I would ask you and your team to the building itself, I really have no issues with that. But the way that you've designed looking to rip up the gas tanks, looking to redo that entire canopy where Alistair had mentioned where the storage tank's going to be. I think it is, from where I sit, it is very problematic based on where that location, based on where you are proposing it. So my hope is that you would go back to the drawing board and come up with hopefully a more, for lack of a better word, more sensible approach to the site that certainly, provides the value that your clients are looking to do with that particular location, while also addressing some of the ingress, egress concerns that I personally have, and I'm assuming, I don't like to assume, but I'm assuming Alistair also has concerns about that as well, so. But otherwise, thank you. This is, at least at face value, I'm enthralled with the new building. I think it's an exciting thing to see coming in. And it'll match up nicely with the bank, with what the bank, Franklin Savings Bank has done. That'll match up nicely at that intersection, so.
Oh, great, thank you.
So thank you.
And again, just so I'm clear, your concern, obviously, again, I understand the traffic on the roads and so forth. And, kind of talking to the chairman's concerns, kind of looking at this thing, possibly look at relocating the tank locations, or are you looking at a different layout? Because I think really from the site itself and the constraints of the existing sites, I don't think you're going to really get any better on the driveway locations because we're kind of stuck. The only other way around it is if you started looking at breaks in the medians, but you're not going to get it on Camp Sargent because you're going across 3 lanes of traffic, so that ain't going to work.
Nelson's here shaking his head. I guess I would,
Shaking my head at a different.
And to get breaks in the median, you wouldn't be talking to
Yeah,
us.
although-
That's
Yeah.
what I
Oh,
was
yeah.
thinking.
Oh, yeah. No, that would obviously be with the state and so forth.
Yeah.
But again, I know
And I wouldn't-
specifically on
and I would tell you to
Continental
avoid the
going
state like
across
the
the
plague.
You can't.
Yeah, you can't.
It's their intersection.
I understand, but,
Yeah.
any changes would have to go through the state is what I was going at.
Sure.
But regardless, I'm just,
Go on, Nelson, please.
mucking around with the
Okay.
configuration is what I'm getting at.
Okay.
I think this proposed configuration poses some improvements over the existing, in that there's only one in and out on Camp Sargent Road instead of 2. What?
Oh, I don't disagree with that.
I think that's.
And the fact that they've moved it further away from the actual
intersection.
entrance to the street
Yeah.
is a good, is
So-
an improvement.
Yeah, the actual first driveway is probably, about 20 feet from that intersection. We've actually
Yeah, it's too close.
doubled that, so.
I encourage you to continue with this. I think it's looking good.
Sure.
Dan, have you got anything to say?
Sure. Yeah, I agree and kind of disagree with what everybody said. So I'll start with the good stuff first. I agree that this building looks awesome, and I think it would be a well-received improvement to that location. Like we just said, taking the 2 entrances off Camp Sargent and turning that into one, I think is really helpful, especially on how quick that first right comes up currently. And I think it's really going to help mitigate some possible congestion or accidents or anything like that. So I think that was a great idea. Couple of things that I disagree with. I think your layout's fine, to be honest with you. There's, like you said, you have constraints, and we're moving things a couple feet here and there. I don't really think you have to do it much. I assume you employ professional drivers that can handle this situation. So, in my opinion, I think you're good. They'll learn the site, they'll learn what to do, and then as patrons, we'll just have to deal with it. Ultimately, it's your customer and that's their layout, that's their problem. So I think you're good. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and also too, I think, especially with the tanker truck, especially because of the amount of stations we have, usually when we do bring them on, they are actually during off-peak hours. So a lot of times when they are coming on, usually it's later at night.
Sure.
You don't have a lot of activity going on the site and so forth, so.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be that big a deal. The one thing I would suggest is, and this is, again, just my own opinion, I would like to, how you have on the right side by Camp Sargent, you have kind of like a checkered walkway. It'd be nice to have it on the other side as well. So let's
Yeah.
connect those. And then the arrows, maybe a right turn. I don't know, just a thought. Instead of a straight line. I know you have a sign there that says right turn only, but you never know. I've seen some interesting driving through that intersection. So, including maybe one right at the stop sign on Continental. I mean, you don't need to overly do it. I mean, I get as a driver, you should be able to figure it out that it's right turn only. But you know, you only have a handful of arrows in there, so if you just change a couple, I think you're good.
Sure.
But overall, I think it's a great idea. So.
Great, thank you.
Neil, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with what Dan's saying. I like the layout too. I think it looks like it works pretty well. I have a little concern about the drive-through and maybe car stacking.
Okay.
And how much room do we have there for? I mean, I can see it here, but I don't really see any measurements.
Yeah.
But how long are we talking? And is that lane just marked on the ground, or are there? How do you designate that area for the drive-through?
Absolutely. So right now on the drive-through, and again, we can even increase it right now. So right now at the drive-through, we're showing about 7 cars stacking, which is usually the minimum that a lot of the drive-throughs will look at when you look at Dunkin' Donuts standards, Starbucks standards, and so forth. Usually it's 7 cars. We can actually increase that now that the side yard is 20 feet. We can actually even slide the building further to the east to maybe pick up another car, maybe 8, possibly 9 cars on the stacking.
And if that were the case, say the lane was full with traffic, would there be a way to still fit in a bypass lane or some way for either, fire or police or even just other cars to get around the building?
Sure. What I was saying earlier is that we do have some room back here. So again, the bypass lane, you would still be in this in the western lane, and then the bypass would probably start as you get towards the south of the side. I'd be able to wrap a bypass around, and then usually what you would do then is once it gets by the traffic, which is the drive-through lane, we'd actually bleed it right back into the egress of it. So that's something we can always add if that's something that the board prefers. I would just reduce whatever buffer we have, but again, it is a commercial property next to us. So again, if that's not a concern, we can absolutely add that. And then also you mentioned with the fire and so forth, what we do as well is when we do prepare the plans, we actually do reach out to the fire official and we get copies of the truck turn templates. So not only do we do a truck turn for actually the fuel trucks on the site, we'll actually show a fire vehicle circulating the site as well.
Thank you.
Mark, your fuel tanker, when it comes in, will have to go out onto Camp Sargent, won't it?
That is correct, sir, yes.
I don't suppose the drivers will be that happy.
Let's get on the highway and go south.
All right. We aren't going to be taking a vote or anything. This is purely a conceptual meeting. But does anybody in the general public like to make some comments about this, about the possible change or the changes they're proposing to do to that Gulf station? I see nobody rushing to...
Just got one more thing.
Oh, sorry. Let me just close the public hearing then and go back to you, Dan.
Just a quick question. Can you help me understand why the handicap's way over on the right of this picture and not in the middle? Is that kind of standard for gas stations? Well, our left, you're right, yeah.
That's where the door is.
I mean, based on the picture, the door's in the middle. Is that common?
Usually we do is, and again, for this instance here is especially with our stores, everything across it, this entire front walk here is actually a flush curb.
Gotcha.
So we could actually locate the handicap wherever we want along that, so that will not run into a grade
Makes
problem
sense.
as far as putting in a ramp and so forth.
Gotcha. That's all. Thanks.
And if that's something you want closer, we
No,
can
I was just
absolutely-
curious. I mean, if it functions the way you want it to function, then that's great. I just
Yeah.
was curious why, because obviously typically it's the closest entrance. So I was just curious.
Yeah, and again, the way we usually do it is that, we'll have the concrete walk, and then you can kind of see on the plan, there's probably about a 2-foot wide line through there at the bollards in the middle.
Yep.
Usually that'll be a pigmented concrete, usually like a red or a maroon type color.
Okay. Awesome.
Well, I think that's it. If you've had some feedback from us, are you happy? Is there anything else you'd like us to comment on, or have you got enough to work on so you can go back and refine your plan and come forward and produce a site plan that meets all the requirements.
Sure. I guess the one question, and again, knowing that there is a new ordinance looking to be adopted, I mean, are we still going to be a permitted use with a?
This is
special
just
except
site
or-
plan regulations. This is not
Okay.
any changes to zoning, so it wouldn't have
Okay.
any impact. It's just going to be changing, landscaping requirements.
Got it.
It's the bare bones of what's required on the plan and how that goes together.
Okay.
We have our final workshop tonight on those regulations, so I'm expecting that, based on how things go tonight, we'll probably be posting those for a public hearing in the next couple of weeks, and once that happens, I'll have either Robert or Kelly send you a copy of the posted version.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Otherwise, you're happy.
We're happy.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll see you when you've got the real thing to look for, real McCoy, as I think it's
Okay,
expression
great.
to look
And
at.
Thank you,
Okay.
everyone, for your time.
Thank you very much. Item 5 is Robert Curry, the applicant and owner, review for acceptance and consideration of final approval for a 2-lot subdivision. Parcels are located at 2 County Road in the R1 residential by map Aquifer Conservation and Flood Hazard Conservation Districts, tax map 3A lot 065, Planning Board case 2019-20. However, this matter has got to be moved till July the 2nd because the applicant didn't notify the correct number of abutters. So we will then move on to item 6.
And just to clarify, that will be renoticed. There will be additional abutter notification sent to all abutters for that hearing.
Thank you very much for clarifying that one. Right, the next one is Lawrence Bird, applicant, and Dennis Druin, owner. Review of a home application to permit a firearms cleaning and repair business. The parcel is located at 168 Camp Sargent Road in the R1 residential by zoning map and Aquifer Conservation Districts and Wellhead Protection Area, tax map 2B lot 310, case number 2019-21.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you should have in your packets a copy of Robert's June 10th memo. As Chairman just mentioned, they're seeking home occupation for a firearms cleaning and repair business. Robert did note that they did not provide required photos or plot plan for the property to review the adequacy for parking. However, we did take a look at Google Street View and have been out past the property. The driveway does appear to be sufficient to accommodate the anticipated client load. You also note that this home is approximately 480 feet from Camp Sargent, Natticook Road, that triangle intersection, and there are other dwellings between the subject property and the same intersection. We recommend that photos be provided to the board as we typically ask for in these types of situations. The application mentions use of a safe, but did not clarify if it was a standard document safe or a dedicated gun safe. Based on previous requests for firearms business for home occupations for the board has required the use of a gun safe as well as a home security or alarm system and a flammables cabinet. We recommend the board discuss these issues with the applicant. And while outdoor lighting is not mentioned, the hours of operation expected to end at 3 p.m. daily. We don't think that outdoor lighting really needs to be considered at this point.
Okay, gentlemen, when you've signed the hymn sheet, please tell us what you're wanting to do and why.
I'm Lawrence Bird. I'm the guy that wants to have the business, and it's more or less a business just to take up my time since I retired. It's something I like to do. I've been doing it for years. My own firearms. I'm not going to make a big deal out of the business. I'm going to just take in firearms to clean them and or repair them, and they go right back out. It's I'm keeping everything very simple. We're not going to get into machinery and things of this nature. No blowing, no anything that creates a problem, that could create a problem.
So this is something you're just going to do by yourself. People will bring you a gun, you'll work on it, and then they'll take it away.
That's right. I have nobody. I will have nobody working for me.
I understand that bit, but if you get 10 guns from 10 different people, I'm not saying they've got a queue outside your house before you do it. They're going to take time. How are you going to store the guns? Did you take the points about that Mr. Thompson mentioned about safes and all the rest of
They
it?
will be locked in a safe,
This is a gun safe.
yes.
Okay. And then you're talking about cleaning solvent and paint and lubricating oil. They will also be locked and stored.
Pardon me?
You mention in your application cleaning solvent and 3 pints of lubricating oil.
Yes, there won't be a large amount because I can pick up cleaning solvents up the street, so there will not be like gallons of it or anything like that. It's going to be small containers, just like a normal, just like anybody else,
And
a gun owner would have.
how will
in
you
his
dispose
cabinet.
of them? When you've used the cleaning oil, presumably you have to dispose of it.
Oh yes, it has to be properly disposed of, just like any cleaning fluids. That's something I always take care of, but I take it down to the dump myself.
Okay. I'm not trying too hard. Please, anybody else got any issues? Go on, Neil.
So does this require a special, like, federal arms license or a federal, to be able to do this?
The only thing it requires is I'm gonna have to get a federal firearms permit for a federal firearms license, and I can't do that unless I have a shop. I can't have a shop unless I get the town's approval.
Right. So with that license, so it does allow you to manufacture as well?
I'm not gonna do any manufacturing. I don't know exactly how to explain that.
Maintenance.
Yeah, just maintenance on the firearms.
So I know with maintenance, a lot of times when you do try to repair a gun, that you have to have you have to fire the weapon. So do you plan on having a discharge?
If I have to fire, if it's a repairer requires firing the weapon, then I'm a member of Horseshoe Fish and Game Club. I'll take it down to their range, and that's where I fire it.
So you don't plan on having a discharge canister on site or anything like that?
No.
No. Okay.
Thank you, Neil, for bringing that point up. I hadn't thought of that one. Anybody else got any thoughts?
Actually,
on, Neil,
just
have
one,
another go.
one other thing. So again, with repair, a lot of times cycling's an issue. So you want to cycle ammunition through there. Do you suppose you'd be using live or ammunition to do that, or would you be using the fake ones, I guess, if you will?
I would go pick up the ammunition that I needed to do it, to fire the weapons. When the owner comes to pick up his piece, he's gonna pay for the box of ammo when I give him what's left.
Well, I mean, as far as like cycling issues, I've had issues in the past with cycling and send it out, and I know that you have to put rounds through the gun and cycle it through. So do you plan on having ammunition on site or storing any kind of ammunition to do that?
Oh, there will be some ammunition, but they're also kept in a locked safe,
Okay.
a fireproof locked safe.
Right. Okay.
For the purpose of the town, I do have the safes on site at home now.
Okay. Cool. Just good. Thank you.
Okay, do you presumably you will have read the copy of the letter dated June 10th, 2019 from Mr. Robert Price. Are you happy with all the issues about fire home alarm system, security system? Is that going to be something that's going to be put in on the site?
Yes.
And I'm not sure, will the fire department want to talk about sprinklering in this area or not?
No, that for a home occupation, no. The one question that we would have for the board then, based on Mr. Bird's responses and Neil's questions, is, as recommended, based on what we've done for previous types of these, the planning board has conditioned no ammunition being stored on the site, but that's something you want to consider whether or not you want to keep that condition or not.
Well, I certainly don't like the idea of ammunition and guns in one place, but that's a personal opinion.
Certainly, they're always stored separately, but I think that it's probably it's a crucial aspect of it when when you're repairing a weapon, you need to put ammunition through it to cycle it and test it. So I think that would be something that would be a necessity for what you do.
Can you not use dummy ammunition? I seem to recall my days of something that's purely.
That's what I was asking because I know that for training purposes they do have dummy ammunition.
Yeah.
And it could also be utilized for testing equipment and checking cycling and whatnot. So
It's
that
for the board to consider whether or not
Yeah,
you want to
could-
allow the storage of ammunition on site.
yeah, okay.
I don't have a problem with it as long as it's in two separate places, locked.
Yeah.
And,
I mean,
and
I
everything
think you're
is.
if you're doing this for a living, you're obviously a responsible gun owner that's done this before. So yeah, I think it's not a big deal as long as it's in a lockbox or
Yep.
separated.
Yeah, I would do that under any
Yeah,
circumstances
exactly,
anyway.
exactly.
It's,
And you do understand that your alarm system's got to be approved by Merrimack Police Department?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Just
Go on, Dan.
this is kind of a personal question, but is there any? Are you the only person living in the home, or is there like children around?
Me
or-
and my wife.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Anybody else got any further questions, or I'd like to throw it open? Oh, sir, do you want to say something?
Yes, if I could address the
Please
board.
do.
Thank you. I'm Dennis Struan. I'm the owner of the property. Mr. Bird has been my tenant for over 30 years. I can he's a perfectly qualified armorer. He's a veteran, outstanding, up citizen, and I certainly have no problems with his little venture here. I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, nobody else got immediate questions. Let me throw it open and ask if anybody in the general public would like to make a comment. If you could move, gentlemen, stand aside, or move aside so that anybody who wants to talk to us can please do so. Thank you, sir. Please come on up. Please sign on the dotted line and then tell us what you're thinking.
My name's Bob Whitaker. I live next door to.
Will you make certain that the microphone's on?
I live next door to this property.
Is the light on the...
I'm Bob Whitaker. I
That's
live next door to
lovely.
this property. A lot of concerns I have. One is there's a school 8 houses down. Okay, is there going to be a sign in front of this house advertising
No.
this business?
Absolutely not.
Okay, is there going to be bars on the windows?
I don't think so. No.
Well,
Okay.
you've raised the issue. We'll discuss it with the applicant.
Okay. It's zoned residential. I bought a house, so I don't have to be next to businesses. That's a concern to me. The place, when I moved there quite a few years ago, was immaculate. It was the most beautiful little camp in town. Since Dennis Truan took it over, it's a slum. It's a complete slum. He hasn't, in 30 years, put a coat of paint on this place. The roof is sagging in. The shingles coming off. It's a complete slum. The place should be condemned, not opened up a business, okay? 7 years ago, I tried to put my house on the market because that's what I was going to do. Comment after comment after comment on why I couldn't sell my house was the slum next door. They have no respect for that property. He's a slumlord. He does not take care of it. He does not even put paint on it or anything. It is complete falling apart. That's a big concern. Now, by having a business next to my house, I do plan on selling my house in a few years, that's another concern to me. Anytime you have some type of business with firearms, you gotta worry about break-ins, and that's a major concern to me, especially if it's right next door to me. Larry Bird is, I think, mentally unstable. I've had to call the cops on him many times. I've had him arrested for assault. So this stuff that you're hearing, oh, he's a law-abiding citizen, no, this is complete opposite, okay? Every weekend, he's screaming and at his wife, he's cussing. He's got an anger issue that is so out of control. He can't even mow the lawn without saying F this, F this, F this, and all kinds of other stuff. He's completely out of control. So for him to be around firearms, oh my God, what are you guys thinking? This is totally insane. There's a whole lot of things. This place should be condemned. It shouldn't be a business or anything like that. Dennis won't put a penny into fixing up this place. It's an eyesore. My value of my property and the other properties around there is sinking every day because of this property. I'm really got some major, major concerns. I've lived there since 1972. I've seen all kinds of things go on that property. It is not to be for business. And a law-abiding citizen? No, no. I've seen illegal septic systems put in on weekends. I've seen all kinds of stuff go on this property. Okay, so no, this is not the type of people you want to be doing business in Merrimack. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Anybody else wish to add anything? Please, madam, please come forward. And again, sign on the dotted line and then tell us what you're worried about.
Hello. I've
Could you state your name
Oh,
for the
sorry.
record and your location?
I'm Melanie Peralt, and I live at 5 Druin Way, which our backyards kind of abut each other. I've always kind of been a live and let live kind of person, like, you know, the true motto of New Hampshire. And to each his own. You want to do what you want to do, and let me do what I want to do. And as long as we're not kind of getting in the way of each other, all's fair. I do have a couple concerns. My husband and I just moved to Merrimack in November, so I don't know any of the history or anything like that. That was just stated. But I do have some concerns. I personally don't love guns. But putting that aside, kind of going with, you know, let him do what he wants to do, and we're all good neighbors. I just had, you guys addressed, or one of you addressed, one of the concerns was discharging firearms on the property. The other things that I think maybe weren't addressed were customer traffic. What do they, you know, what do they anticipate for cars coming and going? Our driveways aren't near each other, but there are a decent amount of children on our street, and you know, I don't know how that would impact them. So the other thing would be, is there any kind of certification that his customers are going to have to show as proof that they can own guns and they're not some crazy lunatic that are going to go shoot up a school?
Good. That's a good point. Thank you.
My other concern was security on the house, and what type of security. You know, like, I don't want to hear just a dog is. He's got a nice German Shepherd that, you know, kind of lets everybody come on the property. Hours of operation are a concern. I don't want, we share a backyard with no fencing. I kind of don't want anybody traipsing through my backyard just to see if their gun works or whatever. And then I understand that he's going to have to go for some licensing. Is that a continued program? Does he have to reapply for licensing? Does he have to, you know, make sure that he's upstanding and I don't even know what the word is, but is he, you know,
Yeah,
following
I understand
the
your
practice?
query.
Okay.
I understand your query.
What's it? Compliant, thank you. And I was gonna get there, I think. Is there gonna be any kind of inspection done on a regular basis, not just to say, okay, the police say the security system is valid and they're happy with it? Is there a continued inspection, you know, maybe unannounced inspections to make sure that the gun safes are being used and the ammunition and whatever is being locked up in a separate location with a different key and all of that stuff? So I think, and then, you know, just making sure that chemicals are taken care of and stuff like that.
Okay.
Those were my concerns.
Thank you very much, madam.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the general public want to say anything? If not, we'll invite the two people, gentlemen, to come back. Mr. Werner, Mr. Bird, could you come back to the table and perhaps address your thoughts on the things that have been said? Come back to the table, sir, both of you, and then tell us the answer to the questions that have been raised. I think the things focus on state of the building, and general discussion on the points that were raised by the abutters. Could you like to answer them?
First of all, I'd like to say that the young lady with her parking, the parking in this residence has no impact on Druin Way whatsoever. Druin Way is Druin Way. Camp Sargent Road is Camp Sargent Road.
I know.
And we just had kind of an F-bomb dropped on us, well, I have, from Mr. Whitaker, which I've never had issues with, never had words with, in any way, shape, or form. He certainly stretched a lot of issues. There are a couple of concerns I had, but it just doesn't concern this board at all. It's unless you wanted to hear them, but
well, if you've got concerns, we'd like to hear from you.
well, I know he had an issue many years ago with Mr. Bird and his dog, and that's where all this comes from. That's simply where this comes from. This calling the cops and illegal this and illegal that. And I'm sure if you'd like to visit the residents, Mr. Bird would love to have you in for coffee if you wanted to.
Well, I only live around the corner, so I've already driven past it, so I know
Okay,
where you
well, stop by for a coffee. These are wonderful people.
All right.
In no way can I can't support anything he said whatsoever. He's just here because, he just wants to make the waves, the usual waves, that's all.
But he does refer to the property being in disrepair. Is that something you are preparing to address or not?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, me being the landlord and Mr. Bird being, in construction his entire life, just as myself, we've constantly spoke about, is it going to be vinyl siding, replacement windows? Are we going to do the cedar? Are we going to redo the cedar, or what's it going to be? He's in the process right now of cutting hedges and plants away from the home. He did have a porch that was in contact with some shrubbery, but that's being addressed as we speak. And he did have a couple of rough boys at one time, teenage boys, but they're both married and on their own now. It's just Mr. Bird and his wife Cecile's a fantastic person. I care very greatly for the both of them.
Well, I thank you for your personal recommendation. Neil, have you got anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I just wanted to know about the access to the property and how your customers would be entering the property, or where in the property is the workshop going to be located, and what kind of access will the people have?
They'll be working where? You'll be working in the house, in the garage? Or?
So when people come to drop their guns off, they'll be allowed in the property. And how is it that they're going to access the property? Is it through the garage? Is it through the front entrance? Is it around the back?
The driveway, the main driveway off of Camp Sargent Road.
Right. So but when they enter the home, is it through the driveway? Is it in the front door, or are they going to be coming around back? I just want to address her concern about a shared backyard and having people, walking around the property with firearms.
No. They walk in the front door.
Okay.
They walk in the front door, right off.
Can you just make sure your microphone's on, please?
Right off the.
You want to make sure the green light's on.
Hit the button on the microphone, sir, right in front of you.
It's on
Yes, as you drive in the driveway, the door's right on the right. They'll be coming in that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Another thing, just to speak on what the other gentleman made mention to is, correct me if I'm wrong, he said that there was an incident where you were arrested for assault. If that's the case, the federal government won't issue him a license if that's the case, because it puts him in the prohibited persons category. So if that is in fact true, then I don't think there'd be much to worry about.
The FFL wouldn't be granted.
It wouldn't be granted in the first place. So if that is the case, when it does come down to it and he goes to get his paperwork all filled out, they're going to deny him of that anyway, if that is in fact the case. So I think that if that is, relevant.
That was a one-time incident, happened a long time ago, quite a few years ago.
Yeah, so.
And nothing ever became of it. And
I'm not speaking to that necessarily, your current state of affairs. I'm just making a mention that if there is in fact an infraction on your record or a violation or whatnot of that level, then it's going to prohibit you from having it in the first place. So I just wanted to touch upon that because he had made mention of that record, or that arrest. So. But that's all. I just
The
wanted
police
to-
department and ATF are going to be the ones responsible.
They're the ones that are going to
Yep.
intervene.
What are we talking about?
Right.
Why are we talking about it?
He's just letting him know that.
I'm just saying, why are we talking about it? I don't see respectfully, Neil, I don't think this is germane to the conversation.
No.
And it's not a part of whether or not he's entitled to have an home occupation permit or not.
Okay.
It's our job to look at specifically what the criteria is for a home occupation. Everything else is anecdotal, and quite honestly and respectfully to my colleague, Mr. Anketell, is not germane to this conversation.
All right, I think you're probably a point, and it's not, we can't knock it down on that basis. I'm bothered in a way that we haven't got a proper plan of where it is. I mean, with this greatest respect, this doesn't tell me which house is where. I think that's not entirely satisfactory. It should be marked out, we should see the driveway. I'm disappointed that this doesn't normally conform to the standards we expect for a home occupation, but on the other hand, I see the staff were prepared to recommend conditional final approval.
Actually, that's incorrect, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Price referred to in paragraph 2 on page 1, since no photographs were provided, staff recommends that the applicant provide one for the board's review prior to the board taking action to ensure that the driveway still appears to be adequate to serve the proposed use.
Well, I think that's,
So based on that recommendation by Mr. Price, I would move that we would table this to July 2nd. And I would remind my colleagues, it's a non-debatable motion.
thank you for making that comment. Does anybody want to comment or second Mr. Boyd's motion?
Can I ask a question, or?
Please do.
Second and then discussion.
Okay, second.
Point of order, it's a non-debatable motion. A motion to table is non-debatable.
Typically, we don't table at the planning board, we continue. So there's a question of whether or not the table is the method that the planning board uses.
I withdraw the motion to hear my colleague's comment.
Please.
Well, if we're gonna continue this, are all we asking for is a picture? Is that all we're doing? Is that what
Correct.
you're asking? Okay.
Correct. And I also think Alistair's comments regarding a plan are also deserve to be.
I can't recall in the years I've served that we approved a home occupation without actually knowing which house it is, where it is on the map,
Correct.
etc. So I'm discouraged, but let's put it that way. So
My preference would be to continue to give the applicant ample opportunity to provide the information so that the board can make an informed decision regarding his application.
that sounded like a motion.
I'll second that one.
Okay, the motion is on the floor, is that we continue this matter till the 2nd of July.
Correct.
With no further notice to abutters, to allow Mr. Bird and Mr. Druin to provide the extra information we're seeking, a proper layout of where it is. There are a few errors on it. If Mr. Price's note saying, says that your home is 1,121 square feet, however, the town assesses it as 1,645 square feet. I think there's a few corrections that we should ask to be put in place, and we'll let you bring this back to us on the 2nd of July.
2nd of July.
All right?
Okay.
Can we?
Is anybody all in favor of that
Actually,
motion?
Dan has a
Do we have
question.
a discussion? portion yet?
You can
Okay.
vote.
Should we, as a board, do we need to know if he needs compliance or inspections from the state or a local level? Is that something we should add, or can we do that? Like, do we have?
No.
I don't think that's a part of the home occupancy.
Okay, okay.
The home the way that the ordinance is, and I'll defer to Mr. Thompson, because he's the one that has the AICP after his name,
Sure.
because I'm just a caveman, that the criteria as it relates to a home occupation is very simple and very specific. It's not broad.
And we're missing a bit. All right, all in favor of Mr.
I'd like you-
Oh,
Could I
you-
make one more statement? One brief statement? One brief statement, please?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
I just want to reiterate on something that Mr. Whitaker said. Mr. Whitaker is the neighbor on Mr. Bird's right. The immediate neighbor on Mr. Bird's left just purchased that property in the last couple of years in excess of $400,000, just did massive improvements to it. It's a tremendous, beautiful piece of property, and if you know that area,
But we don't know which house is yours, which house is his property. But that's why I say we've never approved something without seeing which house and where it is.
I understand, but you'll know this property.
I know where you are, and I've been driven past it. But that doesn't mean to say that you should submit proper details.
Okay, I
So
understand.
I'm going to take a vote on the motion.
And just to amplify your point, and I don't mean to overstep Tim, but we have a community development department, so if there are any questions about how you can prepare to provide the information that we seek, I'm sure Kelly and Robert and Tim are more than happy and available to dedicate some time to make sure that you're amplifying the concerns that the planning board has raised tonight.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'd be happy to work with you.
Ultimately, it's item number 6 from the application that's missing, which is the plot plan drawn to scale, or the
Perfect.
photograph.
Okay.
That's the missing item.
Those are the things we want. All right, all in favor of the motion? No, sir. We've closed the public hearing, but you'll have another opportunity on July the 2nd. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
So the matter is carried forward, continue till July the 2nd at 7 p.m. in this room with no further notice to abutters. Thank you both, gentlemen. Okay, folks, now we'll move on to the Tim's much heralded site plan regulations. Okay.
If you want to take a minute to let the room.
Yes,
clear.
please. Well, this isn't going to be exciting, so I wouldn't have thought anybody wants to stay. Gentlemen, could you continue your discussion outside, please? All right, Tim, off you go.
Mr. Whitaker, just hold back, please let them leave. I'd rather not call the police. No, there's no need to apologize. I understand. Can I, Mr. Chairman, just a brief recess?
Of course.
Thank you. I just would rather have you here, let them leave.
Then they won't get the license. Okay, Tim's just taken a short recess. Is there any more water in there, Mr.
Yes,
Ford?
absolutely.
Well, you could get both of us one, please.
Yeah, keep delivering.
Unfortunately, there's two. Who wants the other one? Zina.
Oh, go ahead, let her have it.
sure?
Yeah, let her have it. Thank you. Why do you keep shutting off my microphone?
Yes, because it's a hot mic.
It's a hot
It's a hot mic. When they were talking with each other, and I dropped the F-bomb, so that's, I saw your mic and.
Wasn't I?
No, it was not, but I didn't know your mic was hot, that's why I. Oh, could you? That'd be great, Justin. Zino would like one.
Sorry, Zena.
Zena.
I have this problem because I have a colleague at work whose name is Zina, and I'm currently at the meet doing her route as well as my own, so I'm sort of between two ladies. It's difficult. Well, when they spell the names the same, then right, Tim, please.
We're good.
I mean, I've read these through, and I like everything I've seen. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is the part 2 of our workshop series on the new site plan regulations. The memo I put together on June 10th spells out changes that have been made since the initial draft back in April. Section 4, if you want to go section by section, I'm more than happy to do so. The items that are highlighted are the areas that have changed since April. And I leave it up to you as to how we want to go forward moving this. I think the bulk of the standards and requirements were really in the previous workshop where we looked at sections 3. This now is really section 4 is what information do we want to see on the plans, where does it go on the plans. Section 5 is more of the particular uses, so we're going to have sections specifically for wireless communications facilities, churches, other places of religious worship, contractor storage yard, and then we're adding, we're moving the conditional use permit requirements for rules and regulations for outlet village shops, which we probably will never need to use again, but they're still going to be in our regulations. Section 6 goes over the things post approval regarding inspection, occupancy permits, and as-built. And then Section 7 is a section to deal with administration of the regulations and enforcement. So I leave it up to the board. If you want to go page by page, I'm more than willing to do that. Or if you want to go specific items that you have questions on, I'm happy to go through that way as well.
Well, yes. Unfortunately, I wasn't at the first hearing on this. The hearing on the
first section.
First section of this. So, and I apologize for that, but I have gone through it since.
Okay.
But my take on it was to go through and try and see, especially the changes. And I found some changes that I think should have some discussion by the board.
Sure.
Please, why didn't you lead the discussion, Nelson?
Well,
You've obviously seen the changes. I mean, I couldn't see much wrong, but
I've got a combination of changes and questions as to what we wanted to do. If you want, I can just start off and
Please.
Go for it.
Go to page 60. It was where my first questions were.
Okay.
And they had to do with, let me see here. Oh, I know that's taken care of. That was the 20-mile thing.
Okay, gotcha.
And you and I have talked about that,
Yep.
and I understand that that's
That's state law. Yep.
state law. Page 61.
Okay.
Let me see here. Page 60. Well, page 60 begins this section on churches, synagogues, temples, mosques, etc. This is new material.
Correct.
That was not in there.
It does not exist in the regulations
No.
currently.
That's
brand
right.
new.
And I think we should have some discussion. Do we really want to do this? Do we want to single out places of worship for these special buffers that it seemed like they're pretty significant buffers that are being asked for here?
They are asked for only when they abut residentially zoned properties.
Yes, understand that. And
Just to give you the genesis as to where this came from, this is a section that, after much debate and work in Londonderry several years ago when I was working there, we brought together folks from the religious community, folks that are abutting religious facilities, and basically had a workshop with them, and this is the result that this was what they were comfortable with in terms of buffering for these types of facilities moving forward. Again, because I used Londonderry's regs as the basis for doing this, I carried this forward as an item for discussion for the board as to whether or not we want to do something with it.
I think we should have a discussion about
Sure.
it. To me, they seem pretty severe, and I don't know of any of the churches, mosques, or synagogues in town that would conform to these.
Jehovah
The
Witnesses.
Jehovah's Witness place.
Jehovah Witnesses.
That one does.
On Wire Road.
The Wire Road
Absolutely.
Jehovah's Witness does. And if you recall, we had a lot of discussion, objections from abutters over that place.
I don't believe that's actually a very large facility. If it is, it's probably would be something that would require a 30-foot landscape buffer.
Yeah. And what do they have out there? I don't.
Oh, they have much more.
They've got a
they
much
have
bigger buffer.
big
than
Much
that.
bigger
on that
buffer.
one.
That was
Yeah.
why we batted it down, although I think I'm right in saying the abutters did go to the Supreme Court, did they not?
One of the
Yes.
abutters brought it to court because it was an issue with the driveway location, and
Oh.
that was settled outside of court.
Well, I mean, I don't think anybody's going to be building any new churches, but I mean, the chances of a mosque suddenly appearing
Mosque is possible, yes.
it's possible.
It's ultimately, it's also an attempt to basically remove any single designation for religious facilities, to group them under a definition that's more all-encompassing, more in line with the religious institutions and RLUIPA, basically, the federal law for religious freedom.
Well, that's where I was going next, because I wonder if we would be subject to some contest based on these.
I don't think we would, simply because similar places of assembly that were located in commercial districts that abut residential properties also have buffer requirements.
Not in Merrimack.
Yeah.
Well, okay, they would, because if there were differing uses.
Correct.
Have we defined churches, mosques, et cetera, as if they were?
Under RLUIPA, they have to be treated as if they were a place of assembly similar to any commercial or industrial place of assembly.
Yep.
They can't go in residential, is what you're saying?
They can. They're allowed to be, but you can't, but in
Yeah.
terms of how you regulate, you can't treat them any differently than you would a commercial place of assembly, essentially. So if
Yeah.
you require a buffer on a commercial place of assembly, you require a buffer for the religious place of assembly.
Yeah. Okay, so if they were in those areas, they would, but there's no reason that they would need to have these buffers.
Like I said, I have no problem eliminating the section entirely.
Yeah.
I was just trying to anticipate and utilize work that I had done and put a fair amount of time
does
into.
it hurt Nelson? Does it hurt Nelson to have it in? What's the objection to having it there at all?
The fact that it's in the site plan regulations, it gives you the ability to waive it. In Londonderry, it was in zoning, they had to go to for a variance. So there's actually more flexibility here than there was in Londonderry.
I can accept that. That's right. Since we can waiver
Yeah,
them.
you have the ability to
I just
waive it.
didn't want to get us into a trap where we were.
No, and I don't either.
Selecting religious groups as being something that required special.
It's not an attempt to do anything extra for churches. It's an attempt to make sure that they're being treated consistently with other places of assembly in terms of buffering residential uses.
Well, it does. It is different.
No, it's not. It's a place of assembly. They have to have the fire certificate and the rest of it, exactly the same as if you were having a dance studio down there.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't see why we should give, I mean, church and state, I'm get confused, but I
Yeah.
don't see why they should have some different regulations than what generally applies for other places of assembly.
Because, I'll be honest with you, just because we're having this discussion, it's something we can discuss at a later time. I don't think it needs to be included specifically as part of this update to the regulations. If it's something that the town wants to go ahead and do something with, let's take a look at it later. Again.
No, I
put it-
disagree with you.
You do? Okay.
I think it should stay in.
I do too.
I'm fine with it.
Well,
Sorry, Nelson.
okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about it at the public hearing.
Yeah, I probably will bring
That's
it up
probably a
again.
good place for it to
I'll
air
bring
it
it up
finally.
again at the public hearing. Okay. Page 62 is next. Oh, yeah. Page 62, this is the outlets.
Yep.
And I'm under C phasing item number 4. They get a conditional use permit, and they talk about phasing, and they say that the phasing's only good for 5 years. And we've got one of those right on our doorstep. I'm sure it's gone over 5 years.
This is your language that existed prior to me doing it. And if it's in black, I didn't touch it.
That's it.
Okay, but here's, the reason I'm raising it is that they have a
phase which they have not completed. So the Merrimack Premium Outlets, if they wanted to do many more, they'd have to come back and
to the
start
board.
again.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't appreciate that was the case, that we had put a 5-year expiration on their thing, and
Because any plans approved, I mean, they'd have to get it approved again.
Yeah. Anything associated with this whole section on Outlet Village shops, if you see anything in red, it's just to make sure that the new section numbers are consistent. Otherwise, I didn't touch anything from a language standpoint.
I appreciate that, and I'm glad that you did put them in red, what you wanted to highlight. Otherwise, I'd be totally lost.
Oh, yeah. Because obviously, item 3 under phasing, it's now we used to reference section 13.07. Obviously, that's from the old subdivision regulations. These are now standalone with a different numbering scheme, so I had to find where that section was and determine what that needed to refer to, which was lots of fun, by the way.
I think you could have a lot of fun with this.
This is why it took me a year.
Yeah. Page 78 was the, what was my question there? 78. Oh, yeah, what's the significance of the green ink on page 78?
That should be, it would just means that language was in a different part of the paragraph and it got moved.
Oh, okay, but it was,
It should be red because it's new language
It's
to the
red, okay.
regulations.
But it's old language that's already been in there.
No, this is actually
No.
all new.
Oh, okay.
The green, I think, was just because I moved it instead of cutting and pasting it, and Word decided to make it green for some reason. But that whole section on inspection services and fees, that's something that I think my department in Public Works is very concerned about doing something, because right now, we've got a couple of examples of situations where we've had larger projects where things have happened on site that because we don't have third-party inspection, we can't go out there and be inspecting things every day. This at least gives the town some
yeah,
assurances that things are happening out there that are supposed to be happening.
okay. Yeah, I could see that it was new, and I didn't have any objection to it. I
But
just
yeah, I
wondered why it was
apologize for the green. That should be,
Oh, I thought it
Okay.
made it bright and nice.
Page 81 was my next question. Page 81.
It's all revocation.
It's on revocation.
Yep.
And it's D1 I, 3 little I's.
Yep.
And it says, when time periods specified in RSA have elapsed without any vesting of rights set forth herein, and the plat plan or other approval no longer conforms to applicable ordinance. Oh, both of those things. So, but this takes action by the planning board.
revoking a site plan takes a formal action of the planning board,
So
correct?
we probably have some plans floating around in your file somewhere that would meet this criteria.
Yes.
If we were diligent.
If you were
about-
diligent and there was something blatantly being violated that the town had significant concerns about, absolutely, you could go through the revocation process.
Yeah.
However, I would wage a guess that most of those, well, I've been here 8 years, I can tell you that unless it's happened in the last 5 years, you wouldn't be able to do this, because once you're past that 5-year period, they are granted vesting under state statute.
Oh,
That's that RSA 67439. That's the time period that projects have to do active and substantial construction and
themselves
substantial
vested.
completion. That vests them from changes to ordinances and
and once the
regulations.
5 years is gone, they gotta start over.
No.
No.
No, once the 5 years is gone, they're protected from any changes that happen in the regulations. That's why I've got a new section back on page 80 that talks about what you need to do in order to vest yourself. You need to have, we now are defining what active
Yeah.
and substantial development is and what substantial completion is, so that we have a standard that says, if you don't meet this, you haven't met that threshold from the statute.
Okay, so then your plan expires, basically, if you don't
correct.
touch
If you
it.
haven't done anything, but if you've done something, we can't change the rate.
If they don't have active and substantial construction within 12 months and/or substantial completion within that 5-year period, then they are not vested from the changes in the ordinances, regulations, and we could go after them to make sure they comply. But if they meet those two things, they'd be protected from
Yeah,
future changes.
okay. And cutting trees wasn't one of them, I noticed that.
That is not something I believe we're allowed under statute to include as part of
Okay,
that.
'cause I picked up on that. That was I know somebody who cut their trees. Let's see here. Let's see, page 82. I had something there. It's on page
That's just me trying to simplify our site plan application fee
Oh, the
schedule.
fees, yeah. Okay, I didn't have any problem with that. I just didn't know if we were raising the fees by this.
We are not we're not proposing changing any fees at this.
Okay, it was all red, so you couldn't tell. I didn't
It's
know
just
if you-
because it's never been a page in the regulations, it's always been a separate.
Yeah, okay.
Are our fees similar to other?
We are competitive with our fees, yes.
Gotcha.
It's one of the things that I periodically check on to make sure that we're not cost prohibitive and discouraging development because of fees being too high. The big advantage that we have over a lot of communities is we don't do impact fees and we don't have a lot of additional things that add to the cost of business that other communities do.
Yeah.
The other reason I felt it's important to put the fee schedule into the site plan regs is now I can't just go and change the fees. It's going to require action of the board to do so.
Yeah. Okay. Then the only other thing I picked up on was I didn't find anything. So this triggered me to go back.
Yep.
The
The
first,
first three sections,
the
yep.
first three. Now, do you want? We're not going to talk about those tonight, I guess, right?
No, we did that last month, and I made a whole bunch of changes based on the discussion we had last month, which will be brought forth into the public hearing.
Okay, the one I have isn't the latest.
What, if you're looking at the one that has a May date on it,
May
that's.
7.
Yep, that's before I made changes based on our meeting in
Oh.
May.
Okay, because I'll just tell you a couple big things that I picked up in here. I didn't find any of the buffer requirements.
Correct. That was, the proposal for landscaping requirements is a completely different direction in terms of how to deal with landscaping and buffering as opposed to specific requirements like we have currently.
Would you mind, Nelson, having a peek at your revised version? I don't mean.
There weren't any changes to that section, because we did spend a fair amount of time
All
on
right,
that.
yeah, we did, I know.
But
With the consensus of the board was is they liked the approach proposed rather than having specific buffer categories and specific requirements.
Okay, that was one thing I picked up. That
Okay.
was the big thing that I picked up out of there. There's a lot on buffing and screening and
What I'll do, Nelson, is once we're finished tomorrow, I'll take once I make the changes, if there are any that come out of tonight,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be putting together the draft for the public hearing. I'll make sure that gets out to all you guys well in advance of it being posted.
okay, and then ping us once every other day.
Sure.
To go and look at it, because this has been around for a long time, and I've just spent.
What I'm hoping tonight is that you're gonna give me a date when we want a public hearing. I'm gonna get this all put together.
We are gonna give
post-
you a date.
Post it, and once I post it, anything that comes in is gonna have to be compliant with the new regulations. And the reason for that, one of the reasons I'm targeting getting that done by the end of this month or the beginning of July, is that's when our MS4 requirements come into play, and we're trying to get those new drainage standards into place and in effect for anything moving forward.
Okay, they're not in here.
That's in the section 3.
First second.
In section 3, yeah, okay. There is stuff in here on drainage.
In terms of requirements for what needs to be shown on the plans, the actual
Yeah.
specific requirements and design standards are in section 3.
Okay, all right. I haven't seen that.
Section 3 is the big bulk of specific requirements for design, and this sections 4 is really, this is what we expect to see on the plans.
Yeah. Okay,
All right,
I'll
well,
leave you alone. Yeah.
you've indicated you want a timescale.
Does anybody else have any other?
Anybody else? Mr. Boyd?
Just one question, Tim.
Sure.
You and I talked a couple of years ago about creating some standards for cell towers.
Yep.
These changes that you put in here, was that,
They take some of it into account. Some of the other things I think are more zoning related that should be going through the zoning ordinance process.
so my question to you is, since we're going through this process right now, should we introduce it to the council?
I think it's yes and no. As the attorney mentioned earlier, the guidance coming out of the FCC is changing so rapidly in terms of shot clocks and what's can and can't be considered. I did a webinar within the last 3 months that I need to go through and make sure that I'm up to speed on everything that's happened in the FCC, particularly if it relates to shot clocks and decision timeframes and what can and can't be done by planning boards, what has to be done by building permit. So those are the types of things I need to get a better handle on. But I did get as much of that as I could into this section in section 5.
Okay, and you'll let me know when you're...
Absolutely, I will.
Okay, because I'd like to introduce this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The biggest thing right now is the tower bond, which we can't require by state law.
Yeah.
No more bond for
No, there's no
damage.
bonding in
We're not
there.
allowed.
That bugs me.
The reason the state did that, and I think it has to do again with FCC guidance, is so many communities requiring that. The guidance came down from the feds that basically said, okay, you can do it as long as you require for every other type of use that you require approvals for. So if I have to do a tower bond, that means Atrium needs to have a bond for the removal of their building.
Mr. Bird has to post a bond for his gun
yeah,
shop.
Exactly. It's
Ridiculous.
It's essentially has stifled the control that we've had.
Yeah.
I just have a minor thing. For the appendices, I'm a horticulturist by nature, so I was just curious, is it standard not to have sizes of these plants? Or should we have a caliber?
We have the caliper requirements in section 3 in terms of the
Yeah, I
specific
saw the
requirements.
caliper.
These right now, in terms of recommended and not recommended, prohibited, is just the plants we want you
So
to
we
use
want
and what we
it
don't
now.
want you to use.
And then more details in the third.
Correct,
Gotcha.
section 3.
Thank you so much.
All right, so you said you wanted us to tell you when you want it.
Yes, I know.
Would you like to tell us when you think you can do it?
I would suggest that July 16 would give me enough time to get everything put together, get the public hearing notices posted, because it's not like a typical planning board meeting where we just have to post the agenda because this is changing regulations. It does require legal notice in the newspaper, so there's some different timeframes I need to keep in play. So I think the 16th, I think, I would love to do it the 2nd, but I think that would be cutting it
No, I
awfully
think,
tight.
yeah.
So my recommendation would be July 16 for the initial public hearing.
And that would be effectively a public meeting and there wouldn't be any other planning board business.
It depends.
Well, all right.
That ultimately, if somebody comes in with an application for the deadline for that meeting, we can't tell them no. State law requires that we have a decision on acceptance within 30 days.
Oh, okay.
What I will say is, just to remind you, in addition to the hearing on this new regulatory document for site plan regs, we also have to have a public hearing for the subdivision regulations to remove all the sections that relate to site plans. And then we have a temporary set of regulations before I go through the same process with the regulations for subdivisions.
Can it be done in the same meeting?
They can be done, they have to be separate public hearings, but
We'd open one hearing, close it, and then open the next one.
Are we expecting a busy agenda for the month of August?
Why?
honestly, I couldn't tell you.
Because I'd like to see all of this wrapped up with a nice, neat little bow on one night, and for some reason, to me, August makes sense, because it would give the board a little bit of latitude. And usually July and August, people tend to be away, just for me historically, when I've sat here, those meetings.
My biggest concern with waiting till August, I did think about August, is because we want to get these posted and effective as soon as we can. That's an awfully long period of time to have posted regulations in effect for over a month prior to a hearing. But again, if the board wants to do, I'm fine with it. like I said, my family's at summer camp until late August, so I got all kinds of evening time during the summer.
I'm away for 2 weeks in July, so.
So our August meeting, the first meeting in August
Sixth.
would be August 6th.
August 6th, I think, is appropriate.
I'm okay with August 6th.
All right. I seem to think the consensus is that
Do
we
August
want
6th.
you to do it on August the 6th.
I will start the process for getting the public hearing notice put together, make the final changes, and I will send it out to review to the planning board before I post it for hearing, just in case anybody has a chance to go through and if you want to try to catch anything. So
Okay.
I'll try to give you a week or so to do that, and then I'll officially post.
Well, we can still make changes after the public hearing.
You can make changes at the public hearing, absolutely.
Hearing,
Yep.
yes.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, this is my first one. Is there typically a lot of attendance in the past?
In regulatory public hearings that I've been here in Merrimack, I think.
Standing room only,
Depending on the topic, yeah.
depending on the
Depends on-
topic.
Yeah.
For the things that I've been responsible for since I've been here, not really.
I remember the rezoning so that Merrimack
yeah.
Premium Outlets could be built.
Yeah.
Oh, I understand that one, yeah.
That was,
And that was slightly prior to charter
and then,
change too,
and
wasn't it?
then, yeah, then the
I was
whole
just-
cup process, so.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah, it's been a little bit different ever since the charter change that gave the council the ability to make zoning changes. But again, this is a planning board document, so the planning board has final say on
Right,
these
right.
regulations, so.
Okay, just-
All right.
Yeah.
curious.
Any other item 8, any action on any other items of concern that anybody wishes to bring to the board? I hear none, so we'll move on to item 9. Approval of minutes which haven't been circulated due to technical
Correct.
issues.
If you recall, Zina wasn't able to be here at the last planning board meeting, so we had to do a quick set of meeting results that have been posted, so we've met all the statutory requirements. We've asked Dawn McMillan, our backup secretary, to do it off of the video, and we're just trying to get that completed. She's got a lot of other boards that she deals with, so.
Absolutely, she does ours, she's very good.
She's incredibly talented, but this was not a hyper priority for her, given her other responsibilities.
All right, that's that.
Motion
item
to
dealt
adjourn.
with, and I'm waiting to hear a motion for item 10.
I just said it, motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Seconded by
I'll second Mr. Boyd's
Mr.
motion.
Disco. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and thank you, and good night, and turn off the